Again, Mario Denton, but today I want to talk about a character-based leadership, but I'm going to go a step further. In my first session, I talk about what I call the basics, the fundamentals. But now I want to move on to the next one, engagement. Why is it so that people are not engaged in the workplace? And your role as a leader to engage people is vital. And one or two things that I want to highlight again, and you will hear me keep on talking and saying the following, is that your character plus your competence is going to give you your consistency. But I know there are different leadership models, and I want to use one specific one that I've learned while I was at university in the business school, and it makes so much sense to me. Is this one of Kuster and Post? He said a couple of things, and he said, number one, if you want to be a great leader, you need to model the way. And there's a reason why that one is number one. The second one is about inspire a shared vision. Key words, key important words, shared vision. Then you talk about enable others to act, and then finally challenge the process and encourage the heart. So I want to use that as the basis. Why is model the way so important? Can you do this? Because is it in your career, you're going through different stages. Often when you start as a leader, you struggle sometimes. And then you move on to a little bit of survival, and then you may be successful. And then you think you've got it all. And I'm saying, no. There's another phase after that. And that's where we're talking about the significant phase. And are you really in your significance phase? So as a leader, you are always learning, but you've got to keep in mind where you are, in which phase you are. So when you're talking about leadership, think about how can you serve other people, where do you start? But as I explained to you, and I want to spend quality time on this topic of engagement, and what I've learned, engagement, why is it so that we slip sometimes through the net? Now I want you carefully to listen to the following stages. The first one is I want each and every person in the workplace to be engaged. So imagine you're playing football or you're playing, doesn't matter where you are, and you suddenly realize 50% of the players are not engaged. But now listen to this. Then after engagement, you sometimes slip into what we call disappointment. Now this is vital. I'm thinking of a couple of days, I was at one stage in London at a business, and I talk about this theory, and I said, you know guys, sometimes it's possible that some of you sitting here is not engaged. And maybe there's disappointment. But if you don't close, fix, and sort out your disappointments, I know what's going to happen. There's going to be a discouragement. And they listened to me. And this was just before lunchtime. And I realized, well, let me throw in this discussion. And then I said, you know, why is it so that in your organization there's often distance? And we discussed that. After the distance, there's disconnect. And then after disconnect, there's discord. And then finally, fully disengage. And then I explained to them the different phases and something that I've learned. This is so powerful. And I thought, well, it's now close to lunchtime. You know, let's take a break and let's have lunch. And one guy said, no. Can we talk about disappointments? And this is where we've developed something like the social contract in the workplace. And I believe if there's any disappointment, you've got 48 hours to fix it. You've got 48 hours to talk to the real person who's actually causing that disappointment. Because if you don't do it, you're going to carry on talking, and I know what's going to happen. There's going to be discouragement, there's going to be distance, disconnect, discord, fully disengage. I've been involved in the last couple of days with a big organization. And this was the basis, and I've interviewed 15 of the executives as well as the directors. And I asked them, talk to me about your disappointments. Why are you disconnected? What are the reasons for these type of things? And it's back to our theory, but somewhere there is a disappointment. And that's why to me it's always crucial that if you are being a great leadership and you want to apply character-based leadership, check and follow up if there's any specific disappointments. So how do we do it? I want to use a simple basic technique that's common knowledge in the business world, and it's what we call a balanced scorecard. Now I'm sure maybe that's new for you, or sometimes you say, what is this all about? It's not a difficult theory. But a balanced scorecard is giving you direction, it's telling who you are, it's telling where you're going, it's telling where you exist. Now, only just those three questions to me is vital. Just think about it. You know, you're sitting with top executives, you ask them what type of business are you in, who are you, why do you exist, and where you're going. And the next moment you said, just talk to me about who are you? Why do you exist? Where are you going? And this was based on the research from Professor Rampersad, who said, well, listen, if you've got a balanced scorecard, but you don't have a personal scorecard, it's like flying with an airplane with one propeller. There's not going to be a balanced one. So the first thing that you ask is, why do we exist? Is there a business reason for that? And I love it. Why do we exist? Do you have a specific identity? And you're going to see, you're going to apply the same questions for the rest of the organization, because you want to bring them in. You want their identity. They need to understand where you are. So that's always the first thing in terms of understanding. And I always use a simple picture. And I will even ask, as we're putting this video together, let's just look at that illustration. Because a lot of times people look at it and say, well, what do you see? And then there's conflict and there's misunderstandings. And I don't want to give it away because I want you to watch it first. But I know when people look at the simple illustration, I ask them, where's your focus? What do you see? And please, I would still love to hear what are you seeing when you look at that video, and specifically that clip in terms of that photo. So, and then in the workplace, not an easy one. And listen to this. Sometimes your plans and even God's design don't match. Not an easy one. And this is why I believe when you look around and sit and appoint people, double check in terms of personality, interest, skills, and values. Do you have the right people on board? If those guys must apply for their own job again, do you think they're going to get it? Why is it so that people are not engaged? And I explain this because we use the balanced scorecard, the personal scorecard, as well as where do you fit in. That to me is vital. And then also, some people are not team players. They're such an individualistic type of person. And there's a place for that, because specifically in a team, there's a couple of words, and if you play around with the word TEAM, trust is number one, and it's coming out of Harvard Business Review. The professor said there's two things that is vital, it's non-negotiable in terms of leaders, and it's trust and respect. After 15 years of research, trust and respect. Now imagine you're sitting in a workplace, you don't see trust and you don't see respect. The fundamentals is not in place. So if you're talking about, you can have all the competencies in the world, but trust and respect is vital. So the first T of the word is team, in other words, is trusted. Then you're looking at vision and how you can engage people. You're looking at all the processes, and then finally relationships. So just the key thing. But I want to carry on talking about the balanced scorecard. We talk about vision and where you are. But there's something very important, and this is about values. Values to me is non-negotiable. I always love, when I work with organizations, one of the first things that I ask them is, well, just give me a list of values. And then I love, I don't want to say love, but yeah, maybe must put it slightly different. But then I ask each and every person, listen, to what extent are we standing and we living out these values? And often you get a feedback, no, this is great, this is great, this is great. And then I personally like to do a 360-degree assessment. Then I ask, listen, if you think about person A and B and C, to what extent is he living out these type of things? So that's so vital. And then your critical success factors. In other words, you're going to be accountable. There are certain things we're going to measure you. What is success? Let's define success. How do you see success? And there's different definitions of success and excellence and all these type of things, but we're getting closer to the point of like, you've got to have accountabilities, you're going to have key performance indicators. It's going to be part of that also. You cannot run an organization without having clear, specific objectives and where do you want to be. So this is a very important process. If you sit down with the team, analyze, look at where you are, where do you see yourself and where you want to go. But that's your personal as well as your balanced scorecard. And it's all about measuring results, and that's what you want to see. So a couple of things that I believe, if you want to really be a serious character-based leadership organization or team, you need to be engaged. But what you can do again is going back to the balanced scorecard, go back to the basics and ask yourself these fundamental questions. And then also part of this process is asking yourself, what do you see that's going to be different? Where do you see yourself? Be very careful for complacency. You've got to ask those questions. What do you want to see different? What do you see? And there are 3 questions that I always believe, and I want you to write this down, because a big organization asked me one day, and they said they've got about $250,000 to do a culture survey. And I realized this is big money. And I listened to the guy and I said to him, I'm going to ask you to do something very simple. And for that, I'm not going to even send you an invoice. But please just do it. Now, when you walk away with a big project like this, you suddenly realize, no, mate, this stupid Mario, you're going to lose. And I said, but just do me a favor, and I want your commitment. And I said, your intellectual commitment as well as your emotional commitment. But intellectually, we sometimes say yes, and emotionally, we don't do it. And he said to me, so what are the 3 questions? I said, number 1, ask each and every employee the following 3 questions. Number 1, what is stopping you to reach your peak performance? Just what is stopping you? And then I said to him, what you need to do is listen. You don't talk, you listen. So what is stopping you to reach your peak performance? The second one is you ask that person, what will that person do if he's in your position? Simple question. What will you do if you're in my position? And the third one is the conflict area. If we can only fix that, it will make a huge difference. And I said, for that, I'm not going to send you an invoice, but please just do it. I'm interested in the results. And still today, I'm using that same technique, and I call it, I've developed a questionnaire calling the one thing. What is the one thing that we need to do different? What is the one thing stopping you? What is the one thing we can do to be a character-based leader? What is the one thing, if we can only fix one thing in South Africa today, you know, next year we fix one thing, and next year one thing, promise you, 2-3 years, that list of 10, 15, 20 things is going to get down and down and down. It is so powerful. So yes, remember my principle about trust and respect as part of engagement. And I want to repeat this because as we talk about character-based leadership, this famous statement specifically of Stephen Covey, who said, I'm convinced that 90% of failures in life are character failures, not ability failures. So if that's the case, start looking at things differently. Start saying, you know, if I look around in my workplace, why are people not engaged? Is there something wrong? I'm thinking of an example where I help a big school. And as I walk in there, they said, we are 2 groups of people. I suddenly realized, and the one person said to me, you are now in the gangster room. And I said, what is that? No, so that is where we get together in the morning. And then after that, and I realized something is wrong. And I work with them, I help them, and I sort out the disrespect, and I work out on unity, as well as what can we do to have a character-based leadership in that specific organization. But you cannot talk about this without talking about how do we implement change. And because we discuss a lot of things, but what I've realized, when you move from the old to the new, there's always a lot of infighting. There's always a lot of insecurities. There's always a lot of say, well, over my dead body, I'm not going to allow this. I'm not going to change this. And it's not going to work. And there's the crazy time. So I know it. And so if you want to implement these principles, it's going to take time. And in one of the sessions, I want to spend specific quality time in terms of how do we implement change? How do we take people with us? Because if you've got 30, 40, 50, 60% of people who are not engaged, what's going to happen? They're going to work every day. And I'm thinking of an example where, and I love asking MBA students this question. I said, and it was just a simple question. If you must apply for your job, do you think you're going to get it? Because the whole idea was, I want to know if this person is engaged. And the one guy said, do you think I'm going to apply for my job? Then I realized, you know, imagine that you work in a workplace, this person is not engaged. You want to bring him in, measure it. And I believe engagement is something you can measure. And I'm saying if it's 50%, it's not acceptable because then there's a lot of irritation. If it's 60, 70%, I'm looking forward for an 80% engagement. That's crucial. That's non-negotiable. So what you will see when you implement these changes, there's going to be a couple of people who are the innovators. They love it. There's the early adapters. There's sometimes the early majority. There's always going to be a certain amount of people who say, well, listen, over my dead body, I'm not going to do this. But that's not something that at the end of the day that you just ignore. You got to keep on doing and pushing it. But your communication always going to be clear when you talk about engagement. Why clear? Simple. C always for clarify the issue. Then L is listen, 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 listen. E is for exploring the opportunities. You've got to explore. A is action, 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 and there's going to be time for review. So a simple technique, CLEAR. Clarify, listen, explore, action, as well as review that. And you can make the difference. So if you want to implement and serious about character-based leadership, very important, vital. There's got to be a clear picture, number one. You're going to have committed people, intellectually as well as emotionally. And I want to just say, don't underestimate the power of prayer. Why? And I want to close with this specific example. Lecturing at a big business in Ghana. And I said to these big business guys, listen, I don't have all the answers. But I'm going to help you with something. It's the most powerful, cost-effective, underutilized management tool. So listen to me. I said, it's the most powerful, cost-effective, underutilized management tool. So they listened to me, and I said, it's called emails. And I carry on. And nobody asked me about, but during lunchtime, as I walk in and decided now it's going to be my time to have lunch, one student approached me and said, well, I miss you during the class. And I decided I'm just going to act a little bit. So when was that? He said, no, you talk about the most powerful, cost-effective, underutilized management tool. Yeah, I said, yes. And you call it emails. He said, yes. He said, listen, there's no English word for emails. I said, I know it because that's the word I put together. And the next moment he said to me, is it like an app? I said, no, it's not an app. Well, is it like Zoom? No, it's not like Zoom. Well, is it something like Skype? I said, no. So I said, what is it? I said, it's emails, it's prayer. In emails, you don't always have all the answers, so don't be afraid of this. And I've done something similar talking to my MBA students in Leipzig where I talked about the KBA and the MBA. There's two economies in the world. There's nothing wrong with prayer. Prayer is still the most powerful, cost-effective, underutilized management tool. You don't need the Wi-Fi. You can use it immediately. So why don't we use it? Why don't we train our people in this fundamental principle? So I'm excited. I know I need to start closing, but please keep in mind these principles. This is very important. And if I can just close with something that's always powerful for me, if you want to be a very engaged, powerful, successful leader or character-based in your orientation, number one, you've got to have a white-hot passion. And that's crucial. You got to have a humble spirit. Humble spirit, in other words, you keep on learning that until the day you die. It's about healthy relationships, but please, not only with your boss and your manager, what about your spouse, your significant other? That's part of it. A simple lifestyle. Don't make it complicated. A clear sense of purpose and calling. Continue to be a learner. And I love to keep focus on God's kingdom. So this is my basis for a character-based leadership, but it's all about engagement. So I want you to make a difference. Be engaged, be engaged, be engaged for the rest of your life. Go and make a difference.